My sister wore my wedding dress after stealing my fiancé. But when I uncovered the lies behind our childhood, I told the world, and finally gave her the one thing she couldn't manipulate, the truth. 3 days before my wedding, I walked into my fiancé's apartment with 2 vanilla lattes and a heart full of excitement, only to find my sister tangled in his sheets, wearing the honeymoon lingerie I'd secretly bought 3 weeks ago. She didn't flinch when she saw me. She didn't panic or scramble for excuses. She just tilted her head, smiled, and said, "We were going to tell you." That was the moment I knew. Valerie had never changed. Growing up, my sister collected things like trophies, my clothes, my friends, my plans. And if I had something she couldn't take, she made sure to ruin it. She was born in Atlanta, me in Macon, just 18 months apart, but you'd think she was royalty and I was the afterthought. When I was 16, she convinced my prom date Trevor Grant to take her instead, telling him I'd secretly been texting another guy. When I sobbed about it, Mom just sighed and said, "She's not trying to hurt you, sweetheart. She's just magnetic." But magnetic isn't the same as kind. At 15, I found her diary. Pages of detailed schemes, which of my friends she planned to turn against me, which guys she'd flirt with, how to copy me without getting caught. "Erin makes everything so easy," she'd written. "She works for it, and I just take it." So when I met Caleb, I guarded him like a secret. He wasn't like the others. We met when I was 23, waitressing at a diner in Chattanooga during nursing school. He was a sous chef with a beat-up car and big dreams, most of which barely paid his rent. He burned half the dishes he touched, but he made me laugh while doing it. We'd stay late, cleaning up sauce disasters and pretending we were co-owners of the next big thing. When he proposed in the parking lot of the gas station where we'd once fixed a flat in a thunderstorm, he had no ring, just a lit match held between us and a whispered promise. "We'll build everything together." I said yes without blinking, and I meant it. I gave him everything. My savings, $24,000 from my late grandmother's estate, went into his food truck dream. We painted it sky blue, called it the frying side, and imagined a future built on garlic fries and grit. Then Valerie showed up. She'd just left a PR job in Miami, said she needed a reset, and begged to help with wedding planning. I was hesitant. Caleb didn't like her. "Your sisters, a lot," he muttered after she mocked his signature truffle mac at dinner. But I let her in. Again, that's how Valerie works. She wraps herself in your trust, waits until your guard drops, then poisons the well. At first, she hovered during cake tastings and dress fittings, making subtle jabs about my arms or how Caleb would love something sexier. But Caleb rolled his eyes at her, called her extra, and I let myself believe he saw through her games. By the time of our rehearsal dinner, she'd wormed her way into everything. She delivered a maid of honor speech that left the room in tears. "Erin taught me loyalty," she said, voice trembling. "She stands by the people she loves, no matter what." Caleb squeezed my hand. "She really loves you," he whispered. I almost felt guilty for doubting her. That morning, I couldn't sleep. I blamed wedding nerves. So I got up early, picked up Caleb's favorite coffee and a cheddar bagel, and decided to surprise him. I unlocked the apartment, the one I helped him renovate, and walked into the bedroom. Valerie, in my honeymoon lingerie. Caleb, shirtless, her hand on his chest. My entire world dropped. Valerie looked directly at me, completely unbothered. "He realized he chose the wrong sister," she said, like it was a weather update. Caleb scrambled for his boxers. "Erin, this isn't." "Stop." She cut in with a laugh colder than any betrayal I'd ever felt. "We've been planning this for months." She wasn't lying. The way she smiled told me she'd been savoring this for a long time. But if Valerie thought I'd cry and disappear like always, she was wrong. This time, I had something for her. A wedding gift she'd never forget. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stood there, numb, watching the woman I'd shared a childhood with wrap a sheet around her body like she was royalty, and I was an intruder in her throne room. "Do you really want to make this a scene?" Valerie asked, like this was a misunderstanding between adults and not the deliberate destruction of my future. I said nothing. I let the coffee fall from my hands, splattering the tile with a brown halo around Caleb's untouched bagel. Then I turned and walked out the door. I don't remember driving. I ended up parked near Lookout Mountain, my phone vibrating endlessly in the cup holder. "Caleb." "Valerie." "Mom." "Valerie, don't be dramatic. You and Caleb weren't even getting along. We were going to tell you. Mom, try to see the bigger picture. This doesn't have to tear the family apart. Caleb, I'm sorry. I didn't plan for this to happen. The deeper betrayal was that I'd believed them both. I had drained my savings, $24,000 from my grandmother's estate, to help Caleb launch a food truck. I'd booked the venue, paid for the caterer, let Valerie run wild with the floral arrangements and dress fittings. And they acted like I was just collateral damage in their whirlwind romance. By nightfall, I was done grieving. I didn't feel hurt anymore. Just sharp, clear. Let them have the wedding. Let them play house. I wasn't going to stop them, but I was going to make sure they never forgot what they did. I went home and emptied the wedding box. Invitations, vow journals, guest favors. I threw it all in a duffel bag along with a USB stick holding something they didn't know existed. Then I made 2 calls. First, to Bethany, my best friend since nursing school. She'd flown in from Portland to be my maid of honor. When I told her what happened, there was silence. Then, tell me what you need. Second, to the venue. Hi, this is Aaron Sandler. I have a reservation for July 14th under my name. I need to adjust the contact details, but not the booking itself. The next morning, Valerie texted me a selfie. She was wearing my wedding dress, the one I'd had altered to fit like a second skin. The custom lace from a Savannah seamstress. My veil. My shoes. Valerie, it just fits better on me. Sorry. She didn't realize I'd never removed my name from the venue contract, or the catering invoice, or the AV system. They kept my wedding date. That was their mistake. With Bethany's help, we redirected the photographer to a new location. We reprinted a small batch of updated invitations and sent them to the original guest list with a sarcastic note. Join Valerie and Caleb for an intimate ceremony, surprise included. Then came the wedding website. Bethany logged in, thanks to Valerie's habit of using the same weak password for everything, and updated every section. The Our Story page now featured screenshots of texts between Valerie and Caleb plotting to steal the wedding, mocking my vows, and calling me a boring doormat. The registry? Replaced with a fake list of absurd items, a $600 cheese fountain, monogrammed bidets, an emotional support python. People thought it was a joke. Reddit didn't. Within 48 hours, their wedding was viral. Guests started backing out. One of Caleb's cousins emailed, "You people are disgusting. We won't be attending." But I wasn't finished. I still had the trump card. 3 weeks before the betrayal, I'd installed a security cam inside Caleb's apartment after we had a break-in scare. It was motion-triggered and cloud-synced. They didn't know, and it had recorded everything. Every kiss, every whisper, every betrayal. So while Valerie was sending cutesy countdown posts on Instagram, I was preparing a highlight reel. I uploaded the footage onto the venue's AV system and timed it perfectly with their slideshow presentation. The morning of July 14th arrived. I wore a crimson suit, sleek and sharp, and walked into the reception hall just before the guests arrived. The decorations were intact. The catering was flawless. Everything was exactly as planned, except the presentation. Guests arrived expecting a Pinterest-worthy wedding. What they got was footage of Valerie, in my robe, whispering to Caleb, "Do you think she suspects anything?" And then, Caleb replying, "She's too naive to ever figure it out." The room froze. Valerie walked in just in time to see the screen go black. Then her name appeared. Valerie Sandler, maid of honor, bride, backstabber. People gasped. Caleb looked ready to throw up. And me? I stepped forward, raised a glass, and said, "To the happy couple, may your marriage be as honest as your beginning." Gasps turned to murmurs. Someone clapped. Another woman said, "Oh hell yes." Valerie ran out first. Caleb tried to follow, but Bethany accidentally spilled wine on his tux. The guests slowly trickled out, most in stunned silence. A few hugged me, but I wasn't there for closure. I was there to make sure they never got away with it. After the wedding blew up, Valerie vanished from Chattanooga. Her social media went private. Caleb disappeared completely. No texts, no calls, not even a coward's apology. But the silence didn't feel like closure. It felt like containment. Like the people who hurt me were doing damage control while I stood in the wreckage, still bleeding. My phone buzzed daily, but not with apologies. Just family members urging me to move on. "Mom, don't make this worse than it already is. Valerie's your sister. Uncle Dean, You've made your point. Humiliating them publicly? Not your best moment. Grandma, forgiveness is what makes us whole, sweetheart. Funny how no one ever told them that. Still, something kept itching at me. Not just the betrayal, but how quickly everyone swept it under the rug. Like it wasn't even surprising. Like they'd always expected this kind of thing from her. So I started asking questions. Not to them. They'd already made it clear which sister mattered more, but to someone who'd known our family before the story was edited to protect Valerie's image. Mrs. Langdon, our old neighbor from Macon, emailed me out of the blue. She'd seen the wedding story online. The subject line read, "Aaron, it's time you knew." Her message was brief. "You've been told a lie your whole life. Your father didn't die. He was forced out." My hands went cold. Growing up, I was told Dad passed when I was 6. Valerie was 8. I barely remembered him, just a deep voice, peanut butter breath, and a toy train he used to wind up for me at bedtime. Every time I asked about him, Mom gave the same line: "He got sick. He made mistakes. We moved on." But that email cracked something open. I dug through archived public records. It took 4 hours and 2 online databases, but I found it. A court file from 1999. My father, David Sandler, hadn't died. He'd been institutionalized after a messy divorce and custody battle. The court documents told a different story. David claimed Mom had manipulated Valerie and emotionally neglected me. He accused her of favoritism so extreme it was damaging our development. He said she encouraged Valerie to lie, to compete, to treat me like someone to be dominated. In one handwritten statement, he wrote, "My daughter is being used to control the other. Valerie's being told she's superior. Aaron's being isolated emotionally. This isn't parenting, it's programming." Reading those words was like swallowing glass. Suddenly, every accident, every ruined birthday, every time Mom told me to just let Valerie have her moment, it all felt rehearsed. Like I'd been typecast as a side character in my own life. And Valerie? She didn't become a monster overnight. She was groomed for it. I called Bethany and told her everything. "Do you want to find him?" she asked after a long pause. I hadn't even considered that. But once she said it, I couldn't let go of the thought. A few calls and emails later, I tracked down his last known residence, an assisted living facility in Sevierville, Tennessee. Small, quiet. Mostly residents dealing with long-term mental health recovery. David Sandler was still alive, and he'd been stable for nearly 10 years. He'd even tried to send me birthday cards. They'd been returned, each one stamped, refused, returned to sender. I booked a room nearby and drove up the next morning. He was sitting in the garden courtyard, feeding crumbs to a circle of sparrows. Older, frielier, but the same blue eyes I had. When he looked up and saw me, he didn't speak, just blinked, then slowly stood. "You came," he whispered. "I didn't think you ever would." I don't remember hugging him, but I must have. The nurses said later I collapsed into his arms like a dropped umbrella. We talked for hours. I asked questions. He answered every one, gently but honestly. Yes, he'd struggled. Yes, he'd been hospitalized. But no, he was never violent. He'd lost custody because Mom's lawyer painted him as unstable and dangerous. He admitted he wasn't perfect, but he never gave up trying. "She told the court you were scared of me," he said. That Valerie confirmed it. "But I wasn't," I said. "I barely remember you." He gave me a sad smile. "She made sure of that." Then I told him what Valerie had done. How she stole Caleb. How she'd twisted my life again. "I don't blame her," he said quietly. "But I blame what she became." We sat in silence for a long time. Then he pulled out a manila folder. "I kept this," he said, "in case you ever showed up." Inside were documents. Old cards he'd written but never sent. Photos of us. A copy of the custody order. And one letter addressed to me, never opened. I read it later in my motel room. It ended with, "I hope you become a woman who demands the love she deserves. I hope someday you see yourself the way I always saw you, worth fighting for." I sat there shaking, not from sadness, but from something heavier. Grief for a life I'd never been allowed to live. I drove back to Chattanooga that night with a clear head. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about truth, about reclaiming the narrative, about letting people finally see what Valerie really was and how she got that way. Because if she thought she'd buried the past, I was about to dig it up and make her choke on it. I didn't sleep the night I got back from Sevierville. My mind wouldn't stop replaying 2 images. Valerie in my wedding dress like she'd earned it, and my father, older, quieter, sitting beneath a tree feeding birds, still keeping a photo of me in his wallet. I had always believed silence was strength. That biting my tongue and being the bigger person made me mature. But all silence had ever done was make space for lies to grow. I wasn't quiet anymore. The next morning, I contacted a lawyer. Then a second one. By noon, I had someone willing to help file a defamation suit against Valerie and Caleb. Not because I wanted their money. I didn't expect either of them to have much. But because they had made real, damaging public claims that I was mentally unstable and emotionally volatile. Language pulled straight from Valerie's carefully crafted smear texts. I wasn't going to let them rewrite my story. But even that wasn't enough. Not after what I'd uncovered in Macon. Not after finding out I'd spent decades mourning a father who was still alive and who had been systematically erased from my life. So I wrote an essay, a full account, the betrayal, the history, the childhood manipulation, my father's disappearance, the trauma of growing up in the shadow of a golden child who was trained to see me as disposable. I kept the names private, but the story was unmistakably mine. I sent it to the Ember Report, a platform known for honest, raw personal essays on family trauma. They published it within 5 days under the title, The Other Daughter. It went viral overnight. Within 72 hours, it had over 2 million views. People weren't just reading it, they were seeing me. The comments section was flooded with stories from other errands. Sisters who were scapegoated. Daughters told to forgive endlessly. People who had been gaslit into silence their whole lives. For the first time, my pain wasn't private. I knew Valerie had read it when she called me. Her voice was clipped, like she was holding her breath. "Are you proud of yourself?" she snapped. "You've humiliated this family." I took a deep breath. I didn't humiliate anyone. I told the truth. "You just want attention," she said. "No one even cares anymore." "Maybe," I said. "But at least they're not caring about you." Click. That was all she had left, control through silence. And I'd taken that from her. But then something unexpected happened. 2 days later, I got a message from Darren, Valerie's ex, the one she dated before Caleb. He said he read the article and that a lot of it tracked. Then he added something that made my stomach knot. Valerie used to brag that she could manipulate anyone if she cried hard enough. Said she learned it from your mom. He sent screenshots of old texts, cruel messages Valerie had sent him, laughing about how easily she twisted Caleb around her finger. "All I had to do was cry in the dress she picked, and he folded," she wrote. But that wasn't the worst of it. Darren also sent over photos of forged documents. Paperwork Valerie had submitted to the wedding venue with my name signed on them. She'd illegally transferred contract details into her name, using forged authorization letters and my digital signature from a shared Google Drive. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was fraud. I sent everything to my lawyer. The lawsuit now included defamation and fraud. We subpoenaed the venue manager, who confirmed Valerie had used fake documents and impersonated me in several vendor correspondences. The paper trail was solid, but I wasn't after money or headlines anymore. I wanted accountability. So I planned a dinner. I rented out a private room at a quiet restaurant in downtown Chattanooga. I invited Valerie, my mother, even Caleb, though I didn't expect him to show, and he didn't. Valerie RSVP'd with a single word, "Fine." I asked my father if he'd be willing to come. He was hesitant, nervous, rightfully, but in the end, he agreed. That night, I dressed simply. Navy dress, clean hair, no makeup or paint. I didn't need armor. I needed presence. Valerie arrived late, as expected, polished as ever, eyes sharp. My mother followed, already scowling. But when my father walked in behind me, the entire room froze. My mother's wine glass slipped and shattered on the floor. Valerie turned ghost pale. No one spoke. Dad took a seat quietly. Then I laid out everything. The custody papers, the sealed evaluations, the rejected birthday cards. Then I handed them a printed copy of my essay. I'd highlighted every moment based on documented truth. No yelling, no accusations, just facts. Valerie tried once to interrupt. "You don't know what she did to me growing up," she muttered, pointing at Mom. "I do," I said softly. "She did it to me too. She just made sure I got the quiet version." Mom said nothing. For the first time in my life, she looked small. My father didn't raise his voice. He simply looked at both of them and said, "I never stopped loving you, either of you, but I'm done being erased." That was all he needed to say. I paid the bill and left. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't check social media. I didn't call Bethany or replay the conversation. I lit a candle, put on a record, let the silence come, not to punish me, but to finally make room. The lawsuit was resolved quietly. Valerie didn't contest the fraud claim. Her attorney negotiated a settlement to avoid escalation. She agreed to pay restitution for the venue impersonation, but no apology ever came. Caleb didn't show up to anything. His lawyer sent a weak statement. Mr. Taylor acknowledges the emotional distress caused and regrets the breakdown in personal relationships. There was also a check enclosed for $3,000, an offer to resolve the matter. I mailed it back, torn in half. I moved to Asheville 3 weeks after the case closed. It wasn't planned. I just woke up one morning, looked at my half-packed boxes, and realized I could leave. No explanations, no permission. For the first time in my life, I didn't know anyone my suffering. I rented a small apartment with crooked floorboards and too many windows. I got a job at a trauma recovery clinic, surrounded by people who understood what it meant to rebuild from rubble. Bethany flew out for my birthday. We ate Thai food on the floor and binge-watched baking shows. I laughed more in one night than I had in the past year. I started riding my bike again. I stopped checking Valerie's social media. I deleted Caleb's number from my phone, not in rage, but in disinterest. Then one morning, I woke up, and for the first time, I didn't feel like a cautionary tale. I felt like me. In late October, I received an email from the Ember Report. They'd seen the response to my essay and wanted to feature me in a follow-up segment, on camera. They asked if I'd speak about family estrangement, psychological manipulation, and recovery after betrayal. For a moment, I hesitated. But then I thought about every girl who'd been asked to stay quiet for peace. Every daughter told her pain was just drama. Every woman who'd learned to bite her tongue to stay lovable. So I said yes. They filmed in my apartment. No makeup, no lighting crew, just a warm afternoon and a cup of tea in my hand. I talked about Valerie. I talked about my mother. I talked about how a house can be full of people and still feel like a cage. By the end of the interview, I wasn't trembling. I wasn't afraid they'd see me as angry or petty or broken. I was steady. And when it aired, the response shocked me. Viewers flooded the comment sections, sharing their stories. Women and men both. People who had spent their lives being gaslit, ghosted by their own families, labeled too sensitive when they dared to notice the cracks. I wasn't alone anymore, and neither were they. Then, in January, I got a message that brought everything full circle. Her name was Claire. She was engaged to Caleb. He'd moved to Nashville. New job, new image, new lies. Claire had read my article and watched the interview. She confronted him. He confessed. She sent me a screenshot of his text to Valerie. This one's smarter than Aaron. I'm being careful. Claire left him that night. She wrote, "Thank you. You saved me from wasting my life. I won't forget it." I stared at the message for a long time, then turned off my phone and went outside. The sky was pink, crisp air, quiet, and I realized something. Valerie and Caleb hadn't just lost me. They'd lost the power to define me. I haven't spoken to my mother since that dinner. She called once, voicemail only. No apology. Just, let's not let the past define us. But I am defined by the past, not as a victim, as a survivor, as someone who stopped the story mid-sentence and rewrote the ending. This spring, I signed a contract with a small press. They're publishing my memoir. The title? The Other Daughter. The dedication reads, "For the girls who were never the favorite. You were never invisible. You were just never allowed to shine."